Hello everyone, this is CJ Novo992 and today we are back with another brand new video. Today's video is finally here because I'll tell you something right now. It is about time that the Rangers Review podcast is back in action. That's right, it's been a long month, ladies and gentlemen, but it was a month worth waiting for as Rangers went ahead and lifted title number 55. So it is going to be a longer episode than normal. I do apologise about that, but it was an emotional one. There was so much to break down, so much to discuss, and if you're going to sit and listen in and get involved down in the comment section below, I couldn't appreciate yous anymore, because it's all about that two-way here on the channel. I'd love to know where you're sitting, because we speak about so many topics in today's video, and I'd love to know where your head is at, what you're thinking, and who the players that's been stepping up to you. What's your thoughts on Stevie and Gerrard? It's about that communication here on the channel, so if you're going to get involved, can't wait to read your thoughts and opinions at the end of this very long but very happy podcast. But speaking of the monthly podcast, it's now time to hand over to my host Stevie for Four Lads Had a Dream. He's got lucky, he got to host the title winning weekend. Raging. Enjoy.
So let's kick this off then. David, the last week has been full of sensational highs. Journey back to last week, talk us through your experiences and just the whole emotion of it all.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the emotion of it. That's not right. I wasn't surprised that it was a very emotional experience. I think the type of emotion, because it was something that I've never felt before, and I think speaking to Bears, that's been a fairly universal theme. And the reason for that, I think, is that there isn't a guidebook on this. No club has come back from what we've come back from, has gone through what we've gone through. Not even ours, not even in the storied almost 150-year history of the club have we had an experience like we'd had. So even though, I'd watched Rangers win a lot of titles, a lot of important titles, some of them in spectacular ways, of course, when you think 2003, 2005, but I'd never felt that. And all the mental preparation that you'd done for it went out the window, I think, when it happened. And I again, something that we all discussed, and I think was clear. There was this feeling among Rangers fans that we were going to win it last weekend. Yeah. I believed we were. I don't know why. I just had this feeling, and it was, again, something that was shared among many Rangers supporters. But even so, the Saturday, and you saw the celebrations from the players, because at that point it was done. Celtic could only equal our points till later. Everybody knew that it was done. But still, you guys know me, I'm a late sleeper. I wasn't up until half time of the Celtic Dundee United game, and I wasn't really paying it much attention. But then when it became clear, and the phone starts going, and people, and because I'm ridiculously, stupidly superstitious, I couldn't turn it on. So I'm sitting there basically just getting it. How daft is this? I'm sitting there shouting at people, come on, what's happening? When I could literally press a button on the remote that's in my hand and watch what's happening, but I couldn't do it because of superstition. When the final whistle went, and then I for about 2-3 days, I experienced this range of emotion, and just the look on people's faces, and with various Zoom calls and FaceTimes, and spoke to my dad, and it was like nothing I've ever experienced. One of the things that will always stay with me is I live in Kilwinning, which is a fairly staunch little part of the world, right? And I knew the final whistle had gone at Tannadice, because immediately outside it sounded like the fucking Tet Offensive, and there must have been about 4% of the fireworks made in the world were just detonated here, and I think probably about 98% of the fireworks sold in the world were detonated across Scotland that evening. It was like nothing else. And then, even now, a week later, I'm sitting here and I'm going, we're the champions, and the buzz will take a long time before it diminishes.
Tommy, part of the joy of what happened was Saturday night and seeing the footage of the players in the dressing room, the dancing, the music, the Klinsmann slides. I think on Saturday night was as good a time on social media as I've ever experienced it as a Rangers fan and Four Lads in the last few years, etc. How were you feeling on the Saturday night? Because I think there was, as David says, there was rightly a kind of feeling that the league was won, and overall that Celtic weren't going to win the next day. Talk us through your emotion.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. If somebody would have come to me and said, "Listen, you're going to be watching videos of Steven Gerrard sliding Klinsmann style across the ibrox first team dressing room floor at some point, having just essentially, bookended the title," I'm not entirely convinced I would have believed them a couple of years back, or I certainly asked for a case of what they were drinking. But in terms of the Twitter atmosphere, probably for Rangers fans, it beat the Casper and Ryan Kent night for its hilarity and some of the stories. But in terms of the feelings that were washing through, there was the overarching feeling that this was us. We'd got there, and Celtic, by and large, would either drop points the next day, or indeed we would get the opportunity to thump them in their own back garden. And I do hold a little bit of sense of I would have enjoyed some of that in terms of winning the title there as well, because I'm a nostalgic man and I like probably too much. I like Neil McCann, and I would love to have relived some of those moments. But in terms of some of the other feelings, I was talking to some other people and some friends, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, actually, and things like Zoom calls. And I was trying to get over to them that when they were looking at it from the outside, and they were saying, 10 years, that's a long time for such a massive institutional club not to have won something serious and not to have won the home title, so to speak. I think, no, you completely miss that. You can't put a date range on this because it doesn't tell the full story. The story of how this title has been won and been subject to all the legacies off the pitch. So you had debasement of a club, the degradation of standards, the almost institutional countrywide attacks on not only the club but also the support that were behind it, the demonisation of all that, this illegitimacy that the club should ever be in existence, the wearing away of the fabric of history and legitimacy again that the club had, the constant attacks, the sneering, to be told that we would never get anywhere again, and the coalescence round about the belief of the fans and the right people who came into the club that actually if we just stand on the walls together, we can repel all these attacks long enough that we can sort ourselves internally. We can stop some of the self-inflicted humiliation by some of the carpetbaggers and snake oil salesmen who came along and pretended that they understood what Rangers and what red, white and blue meant and said all the right sound bites. If we just weathered the storm long enough, this ship is so big and so beloved that it will self-right. And with the right people in the right places and the right actors and the support of the club coming back on, that's happened. No one who I think is outside the club or outside the support will ever fully understand what it means to have lived through that entire decade and had to take all that burden and then finally come out the back end with the silverware. And those were the emotions, you're probably still feeling them. You can probably hear that in my voice and my terminology, but those were the feelings that were washing through me when I was talking to people who were either inside the tent of the Rangers support or outside it. To get to the final stage and be able to say, that's it, it's done, and now we look forward. We have bookmarked the past, and we've bookmarked it in the only way that Rangers were ever going to do it, which is with a nice big silver bookmark. The rest of the country can pretty much suck that up and live with it.
Yeah, you've taken a bit of a battering for the last God knows how long online on social media, and you've kept coming back, and finally we got to see that big smile and do not only reveling in the fact that you are now Ryan Jack's PlayStation best pal. Talk us through it. I mean, Rangers are champions, and you are, you're Ryan Jack's best pal.
Well, I'm not quite sure what we're best pals, mate, but the emotion being able to put that video on, I think I was like, it took like about 7 or 8 hours to actually put the video up. And that probably just tells you the emotions and that was actually gone through the actual video, because I think we were just all celebrating, like everyone was saying so far. It was phone calls, it was family, it was talking to everyone. And then being able to go and do that again with the connection that we've built online and on the YouTube channel was absolutely brilliant as well, because it was almost like I got to experience it all again, seeing the comments coming in, and that was amazing. So that was really lucky. But like you said there, it's been hard over the last couple of years. We've had some absolute stinking times. But being able to edit that thumbnail, do that smile, that's going to stay with me for a very long time. It was very special.
CJ, let's just journey back. Obviously, last time we recorded this, we had just beaten, I think, and things were looking quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
We'll keep a run of form where we're beating St Johnstone in a tight match with Yanis Hadji's goal, drawn at Hamilton, then beat Kilmarnock for a Ryan Jack, like a really special goal.
Brilliant, yeah.
Taken us obviously to Dundee United, where the form has started to pick up, which has coincided with the return of Alfredo Morelos and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've showed, some good form over that time. But in that, there's been some amazing individual performances. When you look back over the kind of last month or so, is there anybody that's really stuck out for you?
Well, I think it's good that there's actually a conversation, and I'm sure people will come up with different answers. But I think one guy that just pops to my mind right away is Alfredo Morelos, if I'm being honest with you, because I think we kind of talked about this over the last couple of months and everything like that, the kind of hit and miss of some aspects of his game, because he wasn't scoring as many goals, and we could see what was trying to happen, the playmaking, we could see it was trying to come into place, but it was actually something David said, and I think it was in two months ago. If Morelos can take his build-up play and then bring in his goal-scoring exploit in the second half of the season, look fucking out. I think that's exactly what you said, David. And I think that's happened to a T. And Morelos has just been absolutely sensational. And not even in the league. You're looking at European as well. He's involved in 8 of the 9 goals that we scored in Europe over in the space of 2 games. That's absolutely frightening. And he's obviously been involved in 27 goals in 36 games this season. It's no bad for someone who's apparently been pish.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing about Morelos that we said, all season, and Rangers fans said this. I think it was ill-informed nonsense in the media that look, we know he's not scoring, but the team is, and he's part of that. And you didn't watch a Rangers game and think Morelos is struggling. You could tell at times he's finishing, he lacked a wee bit of confidence. I remember there was a miss against St Johnstone. It didn't really matter. We were 3-0 up at the time. And you just thought, but then a few days later we played St Mirren and he did get a chance and it mattered. It was 0-0 at the time, or 1-0 I think it was at the time, and he put it away. And that had been the story of his season. He was contributing, he was playing a different role. We had different players. Rangers were one-dimensional last season, there's no doubt about it, in that although we were capable of playing very good football, if he wasn't finishing it off, nobody was. And that hasn't been the case this season. But you just knew that the type of character he is.
Yeah.
He's such an ebullient wee, effervescent type of footballer that you just knew that he's too good not to start scoring goals again. So I was always confident it would come, and he timed it absolutely brilliantly. Some of his performances recently, the goal against the goal last week against St Mirren, it won't get as much credit as it deserves because it was such a good finish. He can only put it there, and it's difficult to put it there. And he does it on the spin, not looking across the goal. He doesn't need to take a look. He just knows where he wants to put it. And he put it past, incidentally, an inspired goalkeeper that day. Jack Anick had a great game, and it was actually a very good season, but that has been Morelos for me to a T. That he'll always provide you with that spark. And when he's like this, when he's confident and happy, he's just almost unplayable at times. And we have seen matches like this recently where we've said he has been unplayable. Europe in particular, the game against Antwerp, both legs, but the second leg in particular, you wouldn't trade him because he leads the line. He battered that defence. He was a goal threat. He was involved in the goals. He was alive to the situations, and also the link-up play and the combination play between the front three. We are a different team to last season. I know a lot of the names are the same, and it might be Roof was a big signing, but the rest were all sensible signings that you would expect a team to make. But it was more about the jigsaw effect, and I think that the biggest thing for me this season is that if player A wasn't scoring, players B and C stood up. If they weren't scoring, players D and E stood up. If they weren't scoring, players A and C would come back and stand up, and that has been the difference this season for me.
Even if you just look at his stats as well, he's got 15 goals, but he's got 12 assists. So that's similar kind of output in terms of if you look at how many goals you scored last season, but the assists really do make the difference in these games because we aren't one-dimensional anymore, and that's a sensational output for a player that's only played 36 games to have 15 goals and 12 assists. And I just think like he's really came into stride at the right time, and even in our most recent European game when we weren't maybe at our best free-flowing wise, how many times did he manage to wrestle and do maybe the nastier side of the game, win us a ball, win us a vital free kick that obviously got us a goal in the game and all that as well. He's been absolutely vital, and nobody's been able to touch him over the last couple of months now.
Tommy, do you think that's the biggest thing about Rangers this season in terms of what the boys were saying there? That when Alfredo Morelos has obviously had a good last sort of 4 or 5 weeks, at times in the season we've had momentous kind of run from the likes of Tavernier. Then you've had the steadiness of McGregor, Colton throughout. The evolution of this team has finally clicked into place just at the right time, and everyone seems to have peaked.
Yeah, I was sitting listening intently there to the guys chatting about that, and I don't think it's news to say that you need a squad performing in order to win a championship. You won't do it with just individuals. Although I don't disagree with anything the guys were saying about Alfredo Morelos there. And you could, as you say, Stevie, you could pick anywhere across the park and you say, well, for example, in the league between January and winning the title, we scored 21 goals in 11 games, but we only concede 4, and that includes 5 1-0 victories, for example. So then you're looking at guys, in the defence like Connor Goldson or Balogun or Hilander. You're looking at McGregor in terms of, these are the games that ultimately bookended the title and got us over. 5 1-0 victories in that period is unbelievable as well. But yeah, it's an iterative point, and I think I've used that phrase before on lots of other podcasts as well, in terms of Steven Gerrard wasn't going to be able to come in the door with his management team and get what was, by and large, not up to standard squad over the line to win the title immediately. Right, fine, we all bought into that. They've upgraded it, they've worked on the messaging, they've got people to buy the narrative, and they've come back with a superior attitude this season as well, and they've adapted. And that last part, that adaptation to the circumstances, etc., because nobody should ever buy any nonsense about any club being more affected by the pandemic than any other. That's just soul searching, speaking into avoid nonsense that. But Rangers got down, understood what they were trying to achieve, the messages landed, and then to your point, have they peaked all at the right time? Well, they've been brought to peak, they've been brought to boil at the right time by the management team and by the structure and by the strategy. So from that perspective, this is exactly what was in the plan. And you get to iteration 3 and you say, you've got your peak players and you've managed to retain them, keep people like Alfredo Morelos, who, had walked himself towards the door when it came to the Lille stuff as well, but kept him happy, done all that behind the scenes work, added the right squad players who know that they're not going to play every time or every week, but who have been worked on in the dressing room to keep happy, not cause ructions, good senior pros like Jermaine Defoe in that space. And then when they come in, they've added something, the consistency and the levels haven't dropped off. And then you've got your key players who have in and out, come good, come bad. Yanis Hadji has had a kind of upward trending season. There was points where he's dropped back to the bench, for example, but he's always delivering something. I still think the boy's, unfairly hampered by the names sometimes that people expect, a kind of scissor kick from the byline getting into the top corner or something like that, just purely on the basis of his surname. But he's come good and delivered. The short answer to your question is, this is not by chance. This is by design. And that is probably the greatest compliment you can pay Steven Gerrard and his management team.
David, Rangers are still thriving and in Europe and have now just added that sort of caveat to the season. And under Gerrard, they really have been exceptional, and were a side that years ago we may have struggled against, would have struggled against, but we're now approaching these games and we're expecting to win. We're going to these places, winning home and away, and coming back and scoring a lot of goals. And then similarly on Thursday night we went to Prague and they've got a very strong record. They've just dumped Leicester out, and at no point did Rangers look out of the game. At times, we may have struggled at various points, but not playing our best, arguably. But we've hung in there. We've got a very valuable away goal. We've came back and and now it's a shootout to go through to the quarterfinals of Europa League. This side are phenomenal. They don't get enough credit.
This is the best in terms of consistency, the best European era in my lifetime as a Rangers fan. And that might sound, people might say, "What? How can you say that?" Well, look at the evidence. I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and Rangers were rubbish in Europe. You would have a couple of good years here and there. I think we all remember 92. Well, if you're old enough, you remember 92, 93, and 2008. But they're the anomalies. That's the problem. There are so many grasshoppers and Levski Sofias and matches such as that. So many bad Fenerbahce that Rangers would go into these ties that on paper you felt, we've a good chance here, and we would fail when it mattered, and that happened to either. There were the odd big win, but the difference is with this current squad that it's not been so much big wins as big achievements. The first year reaching the Europa League from qualifying with a brand new team, that's exceptional. Second year qualifying, that's exceptional. Third year reaching and qualifying again, to the point where you're absolutely right that I was going to say that you go into these games almost expecting. I don't, and that is the scarring of the 90s. I still, get into Europe thinking, just because I've seen it go wrong so often. But the team don't feel that way, and that's quite clear. And the management don't feel that way. And I think that the really good thing, if you don't listen to this till later in the week, you'll know the outcome of the second leg against Slavia. But going into that game, I think a lot of us had, almost jokingly, but still had almost sort of expectations lowered for that tie, because the players were bluttered at the weekend. Well, let's not put too fine a point on it. The players were gutted at the weekend, right? And we've all been there. I think a lot of us were there over the weekend. Thankfully, I don't drink, so I'm fresh as a daisy, etc. But I know a lot of eminently sensible people who couldn't move on Monday, so it wasn't surprising, and I think the fans were okay with it. They understood it, and then you're right. They go there to tough away ground, and they get progressively stronger throughout the match, and it's a 1-1 draw. But there was a wee sense. I had a wee sense we could have won that tonight. Admittedly, it took the best save I think most of us have ever seen to do it, but even so, it would. I think had Slavia got that goal, it would have been unfair. I think a draw was a fair result on the evening, and confidence builds confidence. But the other thing about this team that's exciting, and the thing I like about it is, great phrase in boxing, which is steel sharpens steel, which is, if you train with the best and you fight the best, you get better, because you have to. If you've got the talent, obviously. If you're not good enough, then fine. But this Rangers team, I don't think it's coincidence that we play our best football domestically when we're in the heart of European competition. And I don't think it is coincidental. And I'm delighted that, to win a league, you will have periods where you're not at your best and you've got to get the 1-0s. And the Rangers team this season did it consistently, and that's brilliant. But when we've been putting 3s, 4s and 5s by teams in Scotland, it's generally when we've been playing at that high European level as well. And I think that's great. That's what you have to do as a side. The other thing that I really like about this Rangers team, and I think it's a testament to them that it was noticeable in the first half the other night when they weren't doing it, is that I've watched Rangers teams, better Rangers teams in terms of names, better Rangers teams in terms of money spent, wages, in actual terms, not just real terms, not just historically calculated, but guys who were earning more money than the guys are now. We could not hold the ball in Europe. We treated it like a hot potato. We would go into Europe and we would give, domestically, if we gave the ball away, we'd win it back quickly. We'd give it away in Europe, we wouldn't see it for 15 fucking minutes, right? And that was always a problem. Whereas I watch these Rangers teams now go away from home in Europe and they keep the ball. They can pass the ball. Their technical level is good. And that, I think, is probably the biggest thing about this Rangers side. Having, A, the ability, and B, the confidence to go over there. And we were playing against Slavia, a really good side. Their ability to switch the ball at pace, their passing ability was tremendous. They got runners into the box. Their movement was great. And it did confuse Rangers early doors. And then Rangers got a hold of it, tactically adjusted, and began to impose our game on them. And I honestly can't think of a bigger tribute. And that's why whenever anybody tries to downgrade Rangers' domestic achievements this season, look, the art, is this a good team? Is this a special team argument? The biggest piece of evidence is always Europe. It is, because that's the testing ground. That's when you can't say aye, but you've got a financial advantage, or aye, but you're playing a much smaller teams 4 times a season. That goes out the window. It then just comes down to, is this a good side? And this Rangers team is.
CJ, that's something I've actually been quite worried about, that this team does not get the credit it deserves, because this is as enjoyable a Rangers side that I've watched in all my time, and having a season ticket for just over 20 odd years, like David said there, European wise, this is a fantastic era for the club. Individually, I think we've got some special players in the likes of Ryan Kent, Yanis Hadji, Alfredo Morelos, that I don't think we really appreciate. And I'm a wee bit worried that people are not enjoying this for just how good a team we actually are. And everything that they're getting at the moment in terms of championships and European success, albeit, I say success, obviously we're not in finals or anything yet, but there's no reason why this team can't go and achieve these things the way they're playing and the things they're doing. I'm not saying they're going to win the Europa League. That's not my point. My point is that they are, we should enjoy this. And the goals we've scored this season, some of the team moves, some of the individual goals, when thinking back to Roof and volleys by Ryan Jack and team moves like Alfredo Morelos' goal at Easter Road, some of the saves that McGregor's made, Celtic at New Year, the one the other night. We've had individual and collectively magnificent team moments. This team, for me, like David says, like I pointed out before, arguably as good as I've ever seen. Is there a concern for you that people aren't enjoying it as much, or is this just me just worrying about something that doesn't exist?
Well, maybe you're a bit half there. The one thing that might be actually putting you down that road there, Stevie, is still there is people trying to make excuses to why we are doing what we are doing, and that really annoys me. And that's what I've spent a lot of this season trying to point out and stress on the YouTube channel is nobody lost the league. We won it, and we grabbed it, and we just played at a different standard. No one fell away or they threw it away. No, we won the league. And what we're doing in European football is another standard. There's putting this myth to one side, Scottish football's this, Scottish football's this, no to this standard. I think you just need to look at that, and you can see European teams now with high wages, very good players, tweaking and changing their play styles to play us. And that for me is the biggest compliment. I mean, Galatasaray managers spoke his praise, saying we should are a Champions League side. We've had that countless times already this season, and again we will go to that level, I think, obviously next season. But just looking at us in every aspect, if you talk about the spine of the squad's there. You're talking about special players that can make magic at any moment. We've got that as well. Or like I think David said when he was speaking of the last European game, when things weren't quite working, when it isn't always flowing in the first 20 minutes, we've got a team that really battles and isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves and get dirty and maybe realise that it's not going to be a perfect performance. And that's rare, because normally you get a team that can build up for the back and play really well, but the second it starts going off, they've no go that other edge and the nasty edge and that side that's willing just to go to war toe-to-toe. And I just think this Rangers team, from everything you could ask for, they've given us everything this season, and they've got a wee bit of everything that they need to actually be a success, and that's why they're getting what they deserve this season. It's 100% what they deserve.
Tommy, some of the moments that the team have had overall in the last month or so, even when we've been heading towards clinching the championship, as we talked about before, we've had individual moments of brilliance from Yanis Hadji, Alfredo Morelos, Joe Rebo, and these players are now really coming to the fore. How good can this team be?
That's a broad expanse of a question to walk into there, and I should probably start by saying I agree with the guys talking earlier there a moment ago about probably the word I would use is the maturity and belief of this squad, particularly in the European arena. They don't panic and default to not wanting the ball or taking or losing their adaptability when they're coming up against different questions. And that's probably a really good starting point or a jumping off point to your particular question there, which is if Rangers can continue on the trajectory that they've got, which is not just on the pitch, right? So securing the league championship, getting that first big piece of silverware over the line, coalescing as a team because ultimately you live or die by winning things, belief in the management structure because it's been delivered now, the upgrading with people like Ross Wilson in the background as well to now tee up different types of targets to get us to that CL or take us forward into that CL requirement as well. And some people will obviously leave the squad. We've got good assets across the pitch who can be sold at some point as well. And, you know, that nothing controversial in that happens. But in terms of keeping the core of the team, it's now a case of, okay, how can we add for the CL perspective? And can we keep developing these players? And I think Rangers now put themselves in the driving seat that they get to make decisions about players leaving in terms of, you know, it's not being run completely by a balance sheet decision because we've got ourselves into a much better space there. So if this team can take forward the belief that it's got, and it's not an ineffectual belief, it's not a cardboard belief. You know, we've delivered against big teams in big, tough moments, and we've got really good results both home and away in Europe. And actually, that's a nuance that shouldn't be lost there. Being able to do it both home and away, and being able to do the hard side of the game and win the ability to play. I'm not a fan of cliches, right? But they've taken what would traditionally have been the best parts of British teams, i.e. hard-working, being able to cut teams open directly. They've alloyed that to technical ability in the middle and the top end of the pitch as well, and the ability to unlock teams and do something magical. If you get those things together, you win things. It's, you know, quelle surprise there. But if Rangers can hold on to that and add some more to it, they've got the genesis here and the foundations of a really long-standing team, and probably more importantly, just to finalise that, they've got a management structure that has already started saying that. You know, Steven Gerrard was completely front-footing that when he said, "That's brilliant, amazing that we've got the title over the line." I'm bastardising his words there. Obviously, I'm not as articulate as Steven Gerrard, but we've got that. Now we look forward. It's an exciting time to be a Rangers fan because it's all about building for the future. Rangers aren't in the business of winning one trophy every 10 years. The rest of the country and the rest of the league, and perhaps Europe if we're lucky, will now be woken up to that fact. We are absolutely in the driving seat domestically. And if we carry that forward and we continue with our recruitment process, I can see us getting a lot more good days between now and maybe, whenever, in terms of in Europe as well. We are in a really, really strong position.
David, a word for this manager. I don't need to ask you anything else. It's just...
Well, no, he shouted at me the other week. Well, so change my opinion rapidly. No, there have been times over the last few seasons where I think that people found it difficult to separate people's belief in him from his status as a footballing icon. And by that, what I mean is, I know that certainly when I would say that, I think he's the man. He is going to do this. People say, "Oh, you just love him because he's good looking and cool and such a famous name, and he brings a lot of eyes onto the club." And I was like, well, all of that helps, but no, I actually think what he's building is pretty good here, and I think he was always about attitude. It was always talent, obviously, but the reason he got the job, Dave King has spoken about this, was he felt he was a winner, first and foremost. He felt he could handle the pressure, in fact, thrive in it. And all of that has been true. As I get older, I look at Rangers managers who succeeded hugely. Souness, Walter, Big Eck, even him. And they're maybe not, they're not technical coaches in the sense of, being the guys who are out there doing the training every day. But that's kind of what we need. I don't think we can have a Marcelo Bielsa, someone who is very much that type of coach, very much that type. We need somebody who is that icon, who can stand there and say, "I can handle this. My shoulders are broad enough. I can protect my players. I can take the expectation, and in fact, I can turn it into something that we thrive under, as opposed to wilt under." And I don't think that's a quality that you can manufacture. I think you can learn to be a great coach, but I think in terms of being a leader, being somebody that can take the burden and the emotion that we as fans pour onto them, then I think that that you have that or you don't. And I look at the very special men I've just named who won trophies at Rangers, and they all have it. But I think every one of us would say that they're men who command enormous respect. And Gerrard does. I mean, I mentioned this before, but he is the type of guy that when he walks into the room, all eyes on him. There's a presence, you just immediately sense it. And he is the type of guy who his focus is relentless. And that word crops up a lot from Rangers players. You hear them, and officials actually, you hear them when they're talking, the word relentless, because that's a Gerrard word. That's something that he's imposed upon the club, and he's put his personality all the way through the club. I honestly don't think we can, at this point, quite fully understand just what he's done for us yet. I think that history will tell us that, because for me, Graham Souness in 1986, he saved each and every Rangers fan. And Steven Gerrard has done the same, because you remember back to just before he came in, there was no light at the end of that tunnel. It just looked like an endless fucking tunnel. And we just kept trundling along, and nothing ever seemed to get better. Nothing ever seemed to be the right track. And he came in and he got us onto it. A couple of wrong turnings, that's going to happen. But he pulled us back. And again, it would take someone with that almost maniacal sense of self-belief. And Rangers even managed to, at times, look as though it was cracking his. We all remember Hearts. And that will always be that'll always be seen as the turning point, I think. But we all remember that. And even this man with this incredible achievement, this incredible self-assurance and self-belief, he looked as though maybe this job was actually too big even for him. And Christ knows where we went after that, by the way. But I think that the COVID break, it was obviously not something any of us wanted to go through, but it did happen, and it was, how do you use it? And I think that it gave him and the staff the opportunity to take a wee step back and go, do you know what, we're not actually that far away here. We don't need to throw everything out and start again. We need to make some changes, sure, but let's have a chat with the existing guys here. And then let's bring in a couple of players, a few players that will boost us. And we're not that far away. What would have happened had the games been played last season? I don't know. What would have happened if we continued on a really poor run towards the end of the season? Would the pressure have been too much? Would he have wanted to continue? I don't know. It doesn't matter anyway. It's just a hypothetical. We know what did happen. And what happened was Rangers were able to go away, think it all up again, and realise that the building blocks were, he had done the hard yards, he had done the hard work in terms of building something. Because remember, when he came in, there was nothing there. There was nothing there. And he built it from that to what it is now. And now you look at this squad, it's full of players we could sell tomorrow if we needed to. If we needed to bring in money, there are assets in that playing squad. You look at the scouting, you sort of expect good players to come through the door now because of Ross Wilson. You look at the PR front, we're ahead on that. I mean, obviously, I'm biased, but it's true, we are. You look at the arse of things our opponents are making. This is a 180. This was us a couple of years ago. We were the ones making the stupid statements in the press. We don't do that now. We were the ones reacting to what they did. We don't do that now. This, for the first time, Rangers are a 21st century club. We've finally divorced ourselves from the 90s. And I understand it because the 90s was such a great time. We were so successful. We were at the forefront of European football for a time. However, the downside of that was that too many people at the club fell in love with that period and were locked in it. And it was a case of, we did it like that then, therefore we've got to do it like that now, and we're never going to change. And getting in this team on and off the park, they've finally come in and went, actually, no, that doesn't work. It was great, but it doesn't work. This is what we need to do in 2021. And we are bearing the fruits of that. And there will come a time when these people have to adapt, because time never stops, and the football especially never stops. But right now you get the feeling that Rangers are, for the first time in a long, long time, since the 90s ironically, are actually in a place where we are up with the times, and we are a modern club that are moving with time as opposed to trying to reverse it.
Yeah, well put. It's I'm not going to underplay it. I think we're in a fantastic position as a club, and to have Steven Gerrard and David. I seen, if you remember, last year after that night at Hamilton, and we were all despondent. And I said to you at the time, I said, if he goes in the next couple of days, I'm not going to be surprised. I was reminded of the blog that I did the very next day, which was attacking on the players, and I said at the time that we have to stick with Steven Gerrard because I believed in him, and I think if we ripped it up, then it would have been disastrous for the club. So what you've said there does echo. I think his stature as a man, and I think the way he leads us, the way he deals with things, and what he's done for us shouldn't ever be downplayed. I think he's got a real possibility to go on and build a real dynasty and a real legacy for himself in terms of manager as Rangers Football Club. And when that time come in a couple of years, which we hope doesn't, but if it does come, it'll mean because
we're realistic.
Yeah, but it'll mean because he's been successful at the club, and we accept that. So, I've nothing but praise CJ for Steven Gerrard.
No, mate, it's hard to even begin to try and put it into words or try and talk what David's just said there about Steven Gerrard. But I think if you just go back and have a wee look at just what was really getting said or done before he walked in to where we are now, not just even in the league, but Europe as well, we were a laughingstock. Literally were. You remember the terrible result that we got against Progress, but now you look at where we are in every aspect of the club. I can't even put in words how much he obviously means to this football club, how much he means to me as well. Absolutely just love the guy, and he just oozes class in the way he always defends the club and speaks up. These press conferences, he still control. He used to control games of football, now he just controls press conferences just so effortlessly. And I just love that he's always got the club first in whatever he talks and whatever he says, and it's showed on the part because that's why we are now. It's because of the gaffer and his coaching staff.
Tommy, a final word on Steven Gerrard and the management team?
Yeah, well, I think the glib way to put it would be progress to progress. But adding some flesh to that those bones would be, and the guys have spoken to it already as well, so I'm not going to duplicate what they've said, but there's a human side to Steven Gerrard as well, which we've been able to play through as a fan base. He got things wrong. He's lived that. There was difficult moments, as we've said, at Hearts and stuff like that. He's always been upfront and forthright with the support, and we've been taking on that journey with him. Forget talking about the players for a second. He's taken the support with him the entire way, and we've seen tangible results. The fact that he's been able to come in to what is a huge job under extreme pressures, and we could argue long into the night about has any other Rangers manager ever had it so bad for it to get so good, so to speak. Speaks volumes about the man inside the suit, so to speak. But he's been able to galvanise the support, galvanise the players, learn from his mistakes, do it all in real time in the public glare, and then deliver on top of that. And this is probably the key part to it, without reducing or diluting his standards or his expectations. That's been the key part, and the reason why we can now point to every large organisation, every club with the sense of history like us needs a standard bearer at some point, somebody to rally around. When 2012 happened, we thankfully had Ali McCoist. In previous days gone by with guys like Walter Smith or Souness or any of that type of thing as well, Jock Wallace, all these people. Steven Gerrard was the right man at the right time, and he would, if he was here, he would say, well, my management team and my players get all the credit. Quite correct, right? But he has been that standard bearer and been able to rally around that particular consistent standard flag. If you get that, as he's been able to deliver it, that's why you get to a place where we're talking about a club that has stepped out of shadows that it managed to wrap itself in and is now looking at a relatively clear blue sky with a piece of silverware about to make an appearance into the trophy room and good times ahead. That's Steven Gerrard and the management team's legacy. Good times ahead, good times delivered.
Fuck this, right? We've been nice. We started this podcast this season. We haven't lost in the league. It's all right sitting here and going, oh, well done Steven Gerrard, and oh, well done James Bisgrove and Dave King, and all. And it is. It's all well and good, right? But we've been polite. There's nearly 50 minutes. This is us. We did it.
Yep.
We deserve the credit. I
Confirmed.
don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to be, grabby. And people will be sitting there saying, "How can you say this, David? It's facts. It's science, and you can't argue with science, right? It's fact. Like, look, we start this podcast. Rangers never get beat, and still keep. Well, okay, St Mirren, but that was a fluke. We missed a month. That must have been it.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it.
You
Yeah.
have to keep it interesting for people, or they tune off.
Yeah. Again, there you go. Right, that was it. It was to give us something else to talk about. Thank you, lads. It was all pre-planned. We knew in advance. Look, like even when Stephen Davis looked as though he fucked it with the equaliser, the lads still they got together and went, "Don't worry, we still have time to fuck this," and managed it. But it has been remarkable. You kept waiting for something. I remember speaking to a friend of ours, Podder, Martin Ramsey, and it was the night before the Celtic game on January 2nd. And I said, "You confident?" And he went, "Yeah, very." You? I said, aye, surprisingly so, you do the joke and the gallows humour, but I was like, "Yeah, I really do." And he said, the only thing that, when I look at the two teams, the only thing that is going through my head is it's not very Rangers to just, not cause a bit of drama.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And he said, and that's not really something you should factor into who's going to win this game. That's just our own historical biases as football fans, which it is. He said that, it just generally we don't do things smoothly. This has been smoother than a Spice Girls boob. It's been remarkable.
Gee, so that was a long way round the barn for that particular.
Yes.
There's one for Stevie. This has been. I was actually going to use another star, and then I thought, no, I better go Spice Girls. And it's you kept waiting for the bump in the road because we're Rangers fans and we've been through the last 10 years. And the bump in the road, we're fucking travelling through Holland here. The bump in the road just never came, and that isn't easy because it's very easy to drift off. It's very easy to lose your concentration. Yes, St Mirren, I suppose you could argue that was it, but they instantly got back on the horse. They had a series of tough games and they won the lot. The other thing I want to talk about is, and I do think that's important, I want your views on this, lads. I understand over the last 10 years that there were a section of Rangers fans who, for reasons of self-protection and self-mental health, and I get it when it came to the football team, became almost instinctively negative. Yeah. And that would be, who's this guy we're signing? Oh, he's bound to be shite, right? And no, we're not going to do it. And the reason they did it was understandable. It was, well, if I protect myself mentally and say, no, right, or that he's rubbish, or it's not going to work out, and I don't get my hopes up, then if I'm wrong, brilliant, I'm happy because Rangers have won something. And if I'm not wrong, I get to say, well, I told you so. I hope that we see a reduction in that now, because I think that time has passed. And I understood it, but I didn't think it was a constructive attitude. And I think that you're now allowed, and I know that we're Scottish and it's maybe not a national characteristic, I think you're allowed now to pull the hood down and enjoy the sunshine for a wee bit. And to just have trust in the players, have trust in the management. They've demonstrated that they aren't going to let you down. You don't need to prepare yourself for it. You can enjoy the ride a bit. And I just hope now that this elusive trophy that we desperately needed has been delivered, that people just relax a wee bit. I get it. Horrible 10 years, but it's over.
Inclined to agree with that. It's referencing the point I was talking about coming out the shadows and stuff like that. I think I can agree with the psychology of people not wanting to get, too disappointed because, whoever was signed on a free or, whatever wasn't sexy enough. But to your point, we've won the trophy, we've got it, it's out the way now. We need to look forward because that's where we exist. Like everybody else and other supporters live in the past, we exist in the future, which is where we're going to pick up more trophies. So I'm all for, let's just try and get a bit of belief, if it's not already in the ether, which I'm sure it is now, in the management team, in the structure, in the board, in the investment strategy, and in the transfer acumen that our club now seems to absolutely have inside its doors, which is absolutely a new thing, I sense. Yeah, it's a really positive place, and maybe only Scottish people would start to look for the turd in the punch bowl, so to speak. But let's concentrate on the fact that it's a really positive moment and it's only going to get more positive.
But it is, and I think that we play a bigger part in setting the mood music around Rangers as fans than I think that we sometimes realise. And it goes both ways. You know, the way that people have felt, and at times, unfortunately, truly, that Celtic were this well-run machine and we were this comedy club, we have seen reversed. That's the other way now. Yep. And a large part of that is the perception that we are well-run and successful. And I think our fans get to enjoy that now, rather than, if you look for holes, you'll fall down them. You know, and I think that it's more a case now of just looking to the future in a positive sense. You know, when we get back into stadiums, maybe not shouting at a player after 15 seconds because he's misplaced a pass. You know, that sort of thing. Just relax and enjoy this special team, because it'll change. You know, Liverpool were one of the best sides I think I'd seen last season. Now this season having an absolute mare. That sometimes you're on a crest of a wave, and other times it will drop off. So enjoy it when you're there. We have a special team. Let's all just appreciate it, because it won't last forever. Unfortunately, nothing ever does.
A very small. Sorry, CJ. Just a very small nuance to that. Is that Celtic well-run machine part. Actually, the explosion of detailed, pretty objective fan media, of which we're all part of here in our separate and combined efforts, actually has it helped to set some of that mood music, because it's unpicked some of the, let's say, PR peddled narrative that was in the mainstream media in this particular country. People can now see past the veil, and they can get a lot more direct interaction, and they can pick that up without speaking to an echo chamber. That's a really key point of being able to destabilise some of that narrative that was in there, that only one club was able to run itself well, because the rest of the clubs were inhabited by clowns.
That's fair, mate. I was just going to point out the like what David was saying there about just enjoying it, and with the frustrations, and I think Haji's a perfect example of that. That guy is just absolutely unbelievable at football, but every time he ever plays, I continue to see the word frustrating everywhere. He's got 19 goal contributions this season in 37 games, and he's not even started anywhere near the full 37. I think he's a fantastic player, and I just think that the whole thing you were kind of speaking about there, and maybe even preaching about, if I can say that, David, is just enjoy what we have right now, because it is special, this Rangers team, and it's filled with special players, and it's all right if you thought they weren't good last season or there's had sort of problem. You can let it go. Connor Goldson's now by far the best centre half. You can admit it. It's fine. We can speak about him.
Yeah,
it's fine.
That's another thing. The doubling down. I said this once, so therefore I've got to stick to it. You don't. You're allowed to say, I got that wrong. He improved. I was right then, but I'm wrong now. It's okay. Nobody's going to think less of you. And I do think that the way that we consume media these days is in clip form. You know, social media, etc. And we watch football in highlight form. And I think for a lot of people, that the only games that they will watch are for a full 90 minutes are Rangers. And you'll see things like, we didn't play well, we didn't create chances. You know, we had 6 chances in that half. Yep. And they'll go, but apart from that, and it's like, he's not going to beat his man every time. He's not going to create the passes aren't always going to be accurate. The game lasts 90 minutes, but there's a reason football matches end 2-0. You know, the goals are rare things, and they don't come along that often. And I think that maybe this is something that the game in general, that we have to realise that when you're watching your own team, that patience is required. It isn't FIFA. And therefore, you know, that, because you're right, Ryan Kent's a great example of that. People say, I gave the ball away a lot. But he created 2 goals and scored 1. But is that enough? Yes, that is enough, mate. That's success. He's too inconsistent. He's really not. He's very consistent. And I think that maybe that's just a way that we consume our football now.
Yeah, it's one of the psychological points that, you know, people, when it comes to statistics, that if you read statistics blankly, and I'm not, you know, challenging anybody on this or anybody listening or anything like that, but if you just read statistics, then it doesn't ever give you the full flow of the narrative that's round about that. To your Ryan Kent point, the whole point is he tried 10 things, 8 of them didn't come off, 2 of them resulted in a goal. What was the end score? 2-1, right? So that guy's directly led to you getting the 3 points. What story do you want to tell? Is the positive, negative charges you're talking about there. I do think, though, some of that you would like to think would get stripped away And maybe I'm politely saying people should do more than just look at statistics if they want a full story and they want to comment on it. But if you've got the legitimacy of a trophy in the cabinet, then that ekes out another couple of percent in terms of what people should think about before they start being overly negative. Because I'm completely with you guys on that. We do default to it sometimes. But if you can say, well, this person has went through that, delivered, and made it to the point of getting a trophy and winning the league, okay, let's just take that extra 5 or 10% heartbeat before we start saying that they should be punted out or given a free transfer and sent out of the club.
Goals and assists will never explain to you or tell you what Ryan Kent does on a defensive basis as well. His work rate is absolutely ridiculous for a skillful attacking player. To have his lack of ego that he's willing to run back and put challenges in and defend no matter the score or the time out in the game, that's almost you can't even buy that. You can't look out and get another Ryan Kent right away. You just can't.
That's why he's never out the team. That's why when people and there have been times, by the way, his form hasn't been good in an attacking sense. There was one game, I can't remember exactly who it was against. There was one game in the last few months where he just continued Motherwell away.
When he ran the ball.
He ran the ball out of play like 4 times, and it was clearly he knew he was having one of those days. We all have them when it's like, I can't do right for doing wrong, right? And you could see it, and it affect him throughout the game. And people say he should be dropped. They're like, well, he won't be dropped, and it's exactly why, because of what you said there, that when he's not there, and it's something actually that Joe Aribo needs to get better at. Because Joe Aribo's tracking back isn't all that it should be at the moment, and it's something that he'll need to improve on, and he will, and they'll be working on it. I've no doubts about that. But Kent's shift back the way is important. But it's interesting because I think culturally, the way we watch football in Scotland, if you look at Daniel Candace is a great example of this. That Rangers fans really liked him, and I liked him, right? But he didn't do enough. His work rate was tremendous. The going back the way thing, absolutely no complaints whatsoever. But if you looked at his stats at the end of the season, it would maybe be things like 3 goals and 2 assists. And you can't have that. That's the thing. Yeah. So even someone like Hadji, who there are times in a game he drives you nuts, right?
Yeah.
But it's not about the 19 times he gave the ball away and fell on his arse. It's about the one time he played the killer ball that got us the 3 points, where he did the shot, the goal against St Johnstone, etc.
Hibs as well, yeah.
You need those guys, because when we had a team that was full of honest trials, i.e. that team in the first season, it wasn't good enough.
No.
Yeah. And there's a point that as well, and it sets the scene. No matter who you're talking about, if you're in the final third, right, or you're trying to create something, your stats are always going to be in the negative, right? It's the definition of the game, because everything you try is not going to come off. And that's the same as it is for a Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos, a Kemar Roof, a Joe Aribo, as it is for Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah, exactly. The amount of things, they're only held up as the standard bearers because, a slightly larger percentage of their things come off, but they're never ever going to be in the high percentages compared to what they attempt, because that's not the nature of football in the final third. There's a whole stack of other guys there to stop you doing anything.
It's their job to stop.
Exactly what you're looking for is, and for those stats people who are sitting going, oh, those defenders have got really good stats. Yeah, so by definition, somebody else has been impacted negatively for that, because that's their job. And so when you start to get into that narrative, you start to understand that what you're looking for is impactful things that do come up.
Yeah,
and actually you get, and to your point as well, the Daniel Candace thing, I love an honest trier. But I want to know an honest trier who at the other end of the pitch can also unlock something and deliver me the points that I need to be able to celebrate come the Brasso part of the season.
Yeah.
That's why you spend more money on a Ryan Kent.
Yes, Daniel Candace was a good signing. I mean, he was 700 grand and he did a turn for us. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But to get to the next level, that's why he's a 700 grand player and Ryan Kent's a 7 million one.
He's a moment in time player.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Stevie, are you still with us?
Yes, I was just listening and enjoying your conversation.
Are you going to review the podcast before we go, eh? I mean, I think we've done a good podcast, lads, when the host is actually just sitting back and enjoying it.
Yeah, I think we've done well.
I was just thinking as well that, like, Candace is a bit like, kind of Greg Docherty and things like that. They were good for the time of where we needed to be, and everyone like that has helped us take the next step, because
Yes.
Candeas led to Kent, Docherty led to Aribo, these kind of things. So every kind of upgrade has been welcomed, even if they weren't a long-term upgrade of where we needed to be, and that's the way I look at it. Likewise, when you look over this journey of the last 10 years and where we've been, it doesn't matter how insignificant the part has been played by somebody, it's still massively significant overall, because like Warburton took us to the next stage, like Murty helping us to get to where we needed to be for Gerrard, even if things didn't work out long term. Everyone's played that small part to get us where we need to be, so there's no negativity. And we talk about the positive things and where we've been, and there's a part of me that's just that doesn't feel any negativity towards anybody. And I know how it ended with Warburton and things like that. And it's easy to sit here as champions and be, and be happy and think, well, yeah, you are grateful for the little parts that all these guys made. But that's how genuinely I feel about it.
Everybody played their part in the journey, mate. Now we're actually here and we're enjoying it. So
not everybody. I'm still not.
I'm
still not having this, Ian Black, Franz Randazza. Thanks for your help in the journey thing. I'm not there yet. I haven't arrived there. But Stevie's right. It's an incremental process, and not just with us. Liverpool, which is obviously always going to be a thing that Gerrard's compared to. It took Klopp 3-4 years, because you can't do it in one window now. There's too much money in the game, and players cost too much. So you can't go out. Not even a Chelsea or a Man City can do it in one window now. It's just not possible, because football, no matter what level you're at, players cost too much, even in your financial level, to be able to go out and do an advocate summer. It's just not possible. So you've got to just keep tinkering and go, right, this window we can get these two who are like long-term players for us. But I'm going to need to then cut my cloth accordingly with the rest and get in guys. So it was always a case of just constant upgrades and constantly. However, another interesting thing this season has been the form of guys who've been there. I mean, you mentioned there, we've discussed this, and I think CJ and I are definitely in agreement. Our player of the year is Connor Goldson.
Yes, sir.
Because I think he was always a good player, but there were errors in him that he's cut out his game, and his leadership skills this season have been astonishing. There's been Tav, who's been there for years, absolutely fantastic this season. There's been Stephen Davis, who, I'll be quite honest, I did think when he arrived first from Southampton and he was a slow starter and people said he's finished, I didn't believe it then. I thought he just needed games, and I think he showed that at the start of the following season. But then when it dropped off again, I thought, we're seeing a guy on the decline. He's been fantastic this year, absolutely outstanding. And you've had contributions from guys who have grown into the role as Rangers. I'm thinking, Goldson, Borna Barisic is another one. Scotty Arfield's, I think, been fantastic this season. At times, absolutely incredible contributions as well. And I think that is a big part of it as well. And maybe that's due to the collective and it being broken down into, this is your job, this is what I need from you, and people getting on board with it. But we have had contributions from guys that maybe you wouldn't have thought even a year ago, especially a year ago, maybe had that in their locker. And I think that Ruth has been brilliant as a signing, because not just about his quality and what he's done on the park, but I think he has raised standards. I think when he came into the dressing room, it's that Eric Cantona thing at Man U. I think the rest of them looked at him and think, I want him to think I'm a good player. Yeah. And they all kicked up their levels.
Yeah, I think Ruth has been, as you said, it seems a signing that's a catalyst towards where we really need to be. And I think he's just raised the bar for everybody else to raise the bar. It's definitely helped people, the likes of Hadji and even Scotty Arfield and things have kind of kicked on again. I definitely agree with that point, David.
Even Big Balogun coming into the centre-back spot and just offering his consistency level in that as well, being able to play left centre-back, right back. He's been a brilliant signing into the dressing room as well.
Yeah, he's been great. Nathan Patterson as well, incidentally, when he's come in, looks, I mean, that's a serious bit of potential there. And there's a long way to go, and obviously had the off the field stuff, but that was just that one I think we can just put down to daft boyness. But I'm really excited about the potential of this kid because he's everything that you look for in a modern fullback. And I know he had a tough time in Slavia, but he came through it, and that's how you learn. You're never going to come in and be absolutely fantastic all the time. But he stuck at it and he got through it and he contributed. And that's brilliant because that's the next step. Can we bring through some guys? Can we bring through some talent? Rangers should have the most talented Scottish kids. We've always said that, but it hasn't worked out that way. Whereas with him, you're looking at it and going, oh, you've got a real serious chance here.
Yeah, I love the fact. Oh, sorry, Tom. I love the fact that he went through that kind of battle, like you're talking about in Europe, where he didn't always win his individual battle. Sorry, but in the 83rd minute, when he needed to be there with that phenomenal block after they worked their way into the box, that was brilliant, and that was like him taking. Exactly, that was strong mentally to stay focused and stay in the game, knowing you weren't having your best game. But to be at the right place at the right time at that age is absolutely unbelievable at that level. So fair play to the lad. He definitely passed it, in my opinion. And he'll learn more for they type of games than when he's strolling it, because that's going to help him along quite drastically.
We'll now, as we move into the summer, because the season's still going on. I think we've got two more of these review shows to do for crying out loud. The
European final to talk about soon.
The Gdansk. So we still continue to cover the season. And just before we go today, can we just take a wee moment to a shout out to Walter Smith? Get well soon. In our hearts forever.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, well said, David. Obviously, we wish Walter all the best. He's recovering from an operation, so all our love and thoughts go to Walter with recovery. And finally, just before we end this is one for all of us to enjoy. Rangers have been through the mill the last 10 years, and as a support, we've been the brunt of everyone's jokes. We've been the brunt of having to face all the taunting for the last 10 years. But this is our time. Enjoy it. Don't let anybody take it away. It's our club, it's our city, and it's our trophy, and it's home. Thanks for listening.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That's us reached the end of this month's Rangers Review podcast. Hopefully you did enjoy it enough to be hitting a like button, and again, sharing your opinions down there below. If you did, I'll be speaking to you and reading them very, very shortly. But before I wrap up today's video, as always, a massive thank you from me to thee for sitting here and giving the podcast a shot and giving it a listen. I greatly appreciate all the support, and as always, a massive thank you to Stevie from Four Lads Had a Dream, David from Heart and Hand, and Tommy from This Is Ibrox for getting involved with the podcast as well. It was a brilliant film, and we can't wait to go ahead and film the next one where hopefully there's even more highs and more European things to break down and discuss. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I've been TJ Over 92. That's been the Rangers Review podcast. I'll see you in the next video. All the best and bye bye.